So, I'm going to tell you the story about the king or queen of the birds. Now, this is an old story, and it's told all over the world in many, many different ways, but I like this version. Just over here, further up the valley, is a mountain called Graig y Deryn. Graig meaning rock, and the Deryn meaning either harp, the Welsh instrument, or more commonly, bird. And that's the place that the birds go when they have a big decision to make about bird kind. Now, birds are very democratic creatures. They absolutely love to debate and to make votes. And I know this because I see it. I mean, if you go walking through the fields, you'll always see a great group of corvids, of crows in the field, or in at each other, making decisions and debating. And the rooks in their great big rookeries, their great groups in the trees, all squabbling and arguing and coming up with decisions. I see the seagulls in their rafts on the water, and every now and again, if you watch them, one will suddenly jump up in the air, and that's how they make their votes. And of course, most spectacular of all is the starlings all flying together, and when a decision is made, they'll all change direction as one. Now, it came about that the birds decided that they needed a monarch, a king or a queen. Now, they didn't want one of those kings and queens that was like, off with their head and cancel Christmas. Not that sort of king or queen. No, they just wanted an old bird to, make speeches at Christmas and be a bit of a figurehead for bird kind and, wave as they went past. Now, this was all well and good, and all the birds, all the different types of birds, they all went off to have their debates and their votes. But of course, they all voted for a bird of their own type. I mean, in the end of the day, Raven, who was voted for by the corvids, in Welsh is called Bran, and Bran means king. I mean, that's a bit of a no-brainer, really, wasn't it? And of course, all of the birds of prey voted for the golden eagle. How predictable was that? Now, there was a winner, and it was actually the mallard, because the swan, very beautiful but stupid, voted for the mallard by mistake. But that was no good, because in the end of the day, most of the other birds hadn't voted for it. So that would mean the king and queen would have been voted in by a minority, only a few birds. And I mean, what sort of electoral system is that, hey? No, can't be right. And so what they did was that they went to Graig y Deryn, Bird Rock, for a big decision, a big debate with all of the types of birds involved. Now, at Bird Rock lives an owl, and the owl is the speaker. And we have a speaker in the human places that make decisions, like the Senedd in Cardiff, or the House of Lords and the House of Commons in London. And the speaker is the sort of person that makes the decisions and keeps all the debates and the arguments sort of a bit sensible and a bit organised. And the owl spoke to the birds and said, "We are going to have a competition, and the winner of the competition will be king or queen." Well, the birds thought this was a brilliant idea, and they all started jabbering and tweeting and squawking together, deciding on what sort of competition it was going to be. And the starlings, they thought it would be brilliant to have a formation of flying competition. But the other birds pointed out that actually it needed to be an individual sport. It couldn't be a team sport, because they needed one king or queen. and they sort of accepted that. And the cormorant decided he wanted a deep diving competition underwater, and the others were like, no, we can't have that, can we? Come on now, look, most of us can't swim underwater. Can you imagine what the peregrine falcon's competition was going to be? Can you guess? Speed swooping. Yeah, that's what he was going to do, but the others were like, no, come off it. I mean, what chance have we got? Anyway, after a little while of this, the owl called, order, 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 he said. We are going to have a high altitude flying competition. Well, there was a right ruckus. Some of the birds thought this was a brilliant idea. Skylark, yes, definitely good for the skylark. Golden eagle, oh yes, that's definitely going to be. Some particular types of goose, they thought it was going to be the best idea ever. And the vulture, of course, the vulture, the best high-flying bird that I know, with its long neck and its big wings. Well, what the owl said was law, and so although there was a bit of disgruntled feathers here and about, that's what was going to happen. And all the birds, they started limbering up. I mean, the falcons and the kestrels doing their warming up exercises, stretching their necks, getting ready to go like they do. Yeah, and other birds to stretch the leg here, stretch the leg there, and eventually it was time for the competition to start. And even the birds who hadn't got a hope had a good go of it. The chicken, well, the chicken didn't get much higher than a fence and then crash landed on the other side. And other birds could get a little bit higher. I mean, the robin, yeah, right the way up to the treetop, that was all right, yeah. And the pigeon got quite high, like, you know, maybe as high as a tall building in a city. Yeah, the pigeon got up there. But then, of course, there were other birds that started to go further and further up. I mean, the wagtail, Shigadigut in Welsh, wagtail got pretty high, maybe even as high as the mountain. And the raven, wow, a raven got like right above the mountain, right up above the mountain. But slowly they started to drop out, and eventually it was down to skylark, the smallest bird left, so high that you could even see just a little tiny dot against the sky. There was a particular species of goose, and the goose was doing all right, but he was a bit lonely, because when the goose flew that high, he usually had his family with him, you know, in that beautiful V formation flying. And he was just starting to sort of lose it a little bit, you know, he was starting to get a little bit worried and a bit stressed out about it. Now there was the golden eagle, of course. The golden eagle was just cruising around and around, and next to the golden eagle on opposite circles, because the golden eagle will fly in a clockwise direction and the vulture was flying in an anti-clockwise direction. And each time they passed each other, the vulture would whisper nasty things to the golden eagle on the way past. It's called barracking in sport. It's what the Australian cricketers do. Higher and higher they went, until eventually the skylark couldn't go any further and parachuted back down to the ground. Now, the goose had had enough. Too much. The pressure had got to him. He broke mentally and dived back down to be with his family, and they all got together and gave him a bit of a hug, and it was all right because he'd done his best. The golden eagle was flying higher and higher and higher and higher and higher until it just was him left. all the other birds had dropped out. Now you guys, can you finish the story for me? It's nearly finished. Maybe a couple of minutes left in my story, but it doesn't have to be. Your story can be any way you want. Draw me a picture, finish the story and record it for me, write it down, do whatever you want. That would be fabulous. And if you want the end of the story, carry on listening. If you don't, turn the video off. And if you want to watch the end of it, turn it on again after you've finished. And so, the golden eagle was so high in the sky, the birds sitting on the floor couldn't even see him. He was above the clouds, right at the edge of space. And with a big stretch of the wings and a confident shake of the back, he started to swoop down. But just at that moment, out from behind his neck feathers jumped the tiny little wren. The wren had been hiding, all snuggled up warm at the back of the golden eagle's neck, and he jumped up and flew with his tiny little wings as hard as he could, and he just got a metre higher, and the golden eagle was furious and he flapped his wings, but it was too late. The golden eagle had had enough. He was too tired and he couldn't get just as high, and with a great screech of anger he swooped on back down. Now little wren started to fall, and he fell from the sky, and then he flapped his wings really, really hard, and he stopped, and then he fell, and he flapped, and he fell, and he flapped, and he fell, and he fell, and he flapped, and he flapped, and he fell, and he fell, and he flapped, and he flapped, and he flapped, and eventually flew to the ground, and the other birds caught him and put him in the hedge. And so the wren is the queen of all the birds. And to celebrate, the wren has the best song. A song that really belongs to the big birds. A beautiful song. And you will always find her sitting in the hedge amongst all the jewels. The end. I hope you enjoyed that story, you guys. Please finish it for me if you can. That would be lovely. Stay safe, be happy.